Good evening to all the distinguished personalities here, the organizers, and the participants here. Defense public sectors, which Mr. Malay said that many defense public sectors have been here for more than 7-8 decades, and lot of changes in the government policies have put the defense public sectors in different routes. Right from 1992 onwards, where there was a monopolistic defense public sectors, are today in the scenario of competitiveness. The very policy of providing employment to the people have changed now. Now it should be more competitive, more technology oriented. They have got to participate along with the private public sectors, opening of defense to private supply. Host of issues are in front of the defense public sectors today. But the defense public sectors are definitely, even today, the pillars of the defense of this country and will continue to be. Now, today's topic, which very clearly says that what are the challenges the DPSUs have. This has to be analyzed on two basic fundamental platforms today we have. One is the global scenario vis-a-vis where India stands, number one. And number two is the government policies today. Whether we like it or not, government has made policies. And against these policies, how is that defense public sectors have to take, build or shape themselves to be the leads for the defense of this country and the technology of the country. Now, if you really want to see this type of a scenario, first we see the global scenario, wherein, this is what we call the geopolitical dynamism. So in the geopolitical dynamism, we really see what's happening today, the China, number one. I'm talking about this geopolitical, strategic, and the military, which is very, very important at the moment. And China, as you have seen, is challenging the US and focusing more on the West Pacific today. It is strengthening against the US. It's a lot of activities in the South China Sea, creating a lot of disturbance. It's creating a lot of disturbance on India, in Nepal, in Myanmar, and it's using Pakistan, our neighbor, and they are very keen on their one road, one belt. So such economic corridors is what their interest is. So they are creating a noise around the world on the strategy and military, number one. North Korea, if you notice that they're going on conducting a lot of nuclear tests, they're going in their own way, irrespective of what the globe dictates. Russia, even though they have the technology, are trying to go on a lot of technology from Europe, and they are mainly focusing on the Europe. Europe, of course, you take the France, Italy, Germany, including the British, more or less, I consider them are no players today for their own reasons. The US, which was the world superior power, is more isolated for its own reasons and is no more really focusing on the social community role anymore. So this is the scenario in which India is. So India has to have a lot of geopolitical balancing, and over above all these things, the COVID-19 has come as a real humanity disaster. Could be the reason people call it as China, it could be a biochemical, not a bio war, whatever it is, let us not heed to that, but it's a fact that India in the whole scenario is stuck. Kashmir disturbance, Pakistan disturbance, Nepal disturbance, Aksai chain disturbance. So not only that, it has to balance its geopolitical military strategy needs. Defense public sectors have to keep this in mind, number one. Number two, economic scenario. What is the economic scenario? China is the super economic platform today in the whole world. It's a power which is fast running, and it's challenging the US economy. There is a Cold War of US and China for the economy. On one side, India is trying for a 5 trillion economy shortly. We are totally dependent on China on many aspects. More or less, the manufacturing in the whole world is dead and controlled by China. Today, the scenario in the whole world is about 1.5 trillion weapon purchases. And the focus on China in the economy sector has become much more. We notice that the global wealth is shifting from the North America and the Europe towards the Asia. These are the emerging economies. I mean, there has been some forecast that by 2050, in the order of purchasing power, if you see China, India, US, Indonesia, Brazil is the order of purchasing power of the countries. This is the economic scenario where we are. On one side, 5 trillion, and we are competing with China, and we are likely to become one of the super economic powers, probably number 2 by 2050. DPSUs have to keep this in mind, number 2. Number 3, technology drivers. So we see there is a lot of, what we are still today. An aircraft is manned. Very, very, very little progress on the unmanned vehicles. Ships, corvettes, submarines, everything is manned today. So the front line, whatever that we are thinking in the technology is manned. Everywhere we are talking of machine learning, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence. So today, what's very important? The weapon system in the whole world, the technology in the whole world is driven by artificial intelligence, automation, quantum computing, cyber and space capabilities. This is the 4 founded pillars of the technology today and the next years to come. Rest of the technology is bad. These fast changing technologies is what we need to defend ourselves from. Imbibe that, and our defense has to be based on these 4 technologies. How do we bring these developments faster and flexibly into our operations? We have got to be very fragile, very flexible, and this is what the defense public sectors have to have with them. The next 4th important is what is the context or the definition of a war today? Is it a state war as it was earlier? Maybe World War I, World War II? Absolutely no. If you take the global scenario, you take Syria, Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, whatever you call it, right? Terrorism, urban nationalism, it's a humanitarian disaster. These are certain of the things, whatever you call it as, these are myriad other demands. Internal agitations, it could be against anarchism, it could be religion-based, it could be cultural demand. So military is entering into it, internal security is entering into it. And this is where the military technology comes into the picture. And we need to back ourselves. DPSUs have to think of this, which is the emerging needs. Because for everything and everything, we are bringing in the military resources for our survival, even for internal disturbances in any country. Next, what are the type of weapons that we are looking for? That's the 5th one. Now we are looking for pressing a button that is accurate long-range missiles. We're looking for effective sensors because they are all software based, hypersonic weapons, autonomous and highly network centric system of weapons. We look for all fifth generation assets that we are looking for. Fifth generation basically is completely comprehensive network centric is what we call it as fifth generation. This is what really is dictating. That means to say, summing on this type of weapons, it is more autonomous and network focused, made on smaller systems, which totally is going to replace your huge tanks, your aircraft, your ships, all these things. These are made up of small weapons, network centric. So this is the way we are going forward. And the fifth, the last important dynamism is the intergovernmental strategic and military agreements and tie-ups. There has been, if you notice that there has been a lot of, because oceans are strategic points, whether you call the Pacific or the Atlantic or the Indian Ocean. In fact, on the South Sea chain, everywhere, lots of countries are involved. And if you notice that these countries have their own military information agreements and MOUs, they are the need of the day to sustain and survive in the current scenario and the global position. So these 6 factors are the geopolitical dynamic factors on which India is staging, and all are related to strategy, all are related to military, and ultimately boil down to the technology in our country and the DPSUs, and what DPSUs have to really look at. First of all, they have got to keep this at the background. No more are the same old systems, no more are the same old technology, no more are the same old ways of handling military or a war or a weapon. Now, this is the first background that one has to keep. Second, quickly, Indian government, because this is the second major pillar. Indian government, its relationship and what are the facilities that are the scientific facilities that it's giving. Now, in the current scenario, Indian government has tied up with USA, France, Israel, Russia, South Korea, and many more countries, particularly more on this one. You know that on the USA side, major is the Air Force is going for 114 aircraft. Lockheed Martin, Boeing, they're coming for the F-16, F-18. They want to manufacture, produce in India. You look into the France, Rafale 36 aircraft we are buying on the FMS, foreign military sales, or the Indian government to government contract. So another 114 aircraft we need to manufacture, and everywhere, please note that we have the offsets. So a lot of technology need to come, and we are going for 5th generation aircraft. So there's a lot of technology involved, and 50% offset minimum technology is going to come. And with the foreign direct investment of 74% coming in strategic area, a lot of these countries are queuing to come inside. Israel, it's approximately about $1 billion a year that India has. AWACS, early warning system, drones are there, UAVs are there, radar systems are there, anti-missiles are there, particularly anti-tank missiles, weapon systems. You go to Russia, S-400 is there. Recently, we are going for Su aircraft. We are going for the MiG-29. We are buying 12 aircraft. There's a lot of negotiation, discussion going on the Kamau helicopters, mainly for the Navy. If you go to the South Korea, which is one of the most emerging on the Asian side, shipbuilding cooperation agreement exists. One identifiable shipbuilding to work together. Then unmanned, basically for the unmanned ground vehicle and robotics, there's an arrangement. So there's a lot of agreement with these countries. And there are a lot of weapon systems which is software driven, and these weapon systems are going to be under the government offset policies, and a lot of things are going to come in. So this is a factor that we need to keep it in our mind, because all these things, whether you take the BEML, BDL, BEL, HIL, Midhani, or the shipboard, shipads, all have a lot of projects which are encompassed in these government tax. There's another initiative of the government on the DPSUs. There are a lot of things. Okay, the government Make in India initiative, a lot of impetus given. Strategic partnership policies are there right from 2016. Atmanirbhara, where FDI of 74% came out the picture. They are talking of corporatization of the OFBs. Up to 200 crores, they have said no imports, only it's from the local sources. And that being there, the government has given a lot of autonomy to the board of the PSUs. It is no more like 1 crore, 2 crore as earlier days. There is a lot up to 100 crores, 200 crores, 300 crores. They can go. There is a lot of enhancement of delegation of power. There is what you have technology agreements with various countries, as I mentioned. Then there is a free hand to develop dual-use technology by R&Ds of the DPSUs. Naturally, you know, all of you know well that we have a lot of land resource defense production capability. I mean, these are some of our things that we have. So at the background of the global geopolitical dynamism, at the background of the government policies and the intergovernmental agreements with various countries on military and strategy, and the resources that the public sectors have. Now, how can we leverage it, and what is the way forward for us to look at it? That's very important. Now, fundamentally, we know what technology that we need to go. So we have got to be very dynamic. There has to be a behavioral change. There has to be an organizational restructure, and there has to be an efficient program management, and there has to be an efficient leader fundamentally in all DPSUs to take forward. In fact, my wish is the government, the way the board is being selected, I mean to say the functional directors, etc., etc. I think it's for the organizations like NCOA to take up to see to it that government frames policies, to see that a dynamic leader comes who can look into these things and make the organization flexible and make the organization behave to suit the requirement. This is number one, particularly. Project management is something very, very important. It's failing. Okay, that's way. The third one, R&D. Unfortunately, DPSUs are dependent on R&D of DRDO. DRDO has failed. DRDO has failed. Lots and lots of projects of DRDO have not met the timelines, and definitely, and the R&D that is done, a missile system or a weapon system that is developed has a lot of lacuna. That's why Mr. Malesh was mentioning about the bulk production clearance, etc., etc. If the DRDOs do their fundamental job, probably defense production units don't have any problems. But that's not the case. Let's not blame anybody. But now don't depend on DRDOs. Because there are a lot of strategic alliances the government has with countries, now that be dynamic enough, because there are provisions in the government that you can form JVs, you can form a private-public partnership. There are a lot of scope for that. Aim at these things to bring in the technology in the defense public sectors, particularly, and focus on the R&D where you get the technology from these JVs, because 74% is there. Form a JV, totally under the control of a particular public sector. For exogenous or endogenous reasons, whatever it is, DRDO has failed. So examples are plenty. Kavai engine failed. LRSAM, it has failed. LCA, 3 decades plus to come out with an aircraft. So DRDO has failed. Let us accept the fact. How to rejuvenate the DRDO is not our job when we are focused on DPSC at the moment. Then build your own supply chain. In fact, exactly when one of the CAG report is that we are heavily import dependent. Yes. Now we need to nurture some of the local MSMEs, some of the industries, private industry, to see to it that they tie up with my technology partner so that they become in the Indian soil. And it's not so easy as said, but these are the exercises that needs to be done by the DPS. It is a challenge. So that this is one. So we need to build our own supply chain. And definitely, I'll tell you, does not depend on DRDO. For example, I was dealing with BDL missiles. And the Akash program, in fact, BDL at one point of time were telling that DRDO has not developed alternative source, and so I am unable to give my production to the ministry, to the army. So DRDO, why BDL cannot develop alternate source? Why should I depend on DRDO? Okay, so I am only trying to put it across that we need to depend on ourselves to really come out with very good supply chain of our own to see to it that my programs does not suffer. And this is where I said that I have to effectively use the FMS or the intergovernmental agreement to form my own JV or to form my own this one so that I get the technology transfer out of it. And there are lots and lots of areas, domains where dual use technology is there in the military technology, and there is a technology development for available in the government. So such dual use in my own R&D, we have to draw the money from the technology development fund and develop the dual use technology myself. I need to depend on DRDO or anything like that. This is a challenging task that one need to take, and DPSUs need to take. In fact, for GRSC has recently got some 6,300 crores worth of, it's an anti-submarine warfare shallow water craft. So they are going to develop it. So there is a lot of dual use technology in that. So for which probably they can draw the money and do that. One of the examples. And focus more on the private-public partnership with the foreign technology, where say the FMS sale, etc., can be used. So these are the host of the things, right from the organizational structural change into bringing in these technologies with the foreign who have, whether it could be artificial intelligence or autonomous or sensors or etc., whatever it is, bring in this technology within us and go forward. So this needs a dynamic leader in every DPSU. There's no doubt about it. And DPSU should think of, I'm sure, 20 years from now or 30 years from now. And it is the only one. You may talk of L&T, you may talk of Godrej, you may talk of XYZ, but DPSUs are the only core people who have the strength to absorb the technology and take it forward, take it from me. You give another 20 years, 30 years to private sector, it's not so easy. It's a 7-decade, 8-decade, 6-decade DPSUs. You have the core technology to absorb technology and imbibe it, incorporate it, execute the projects. It's possible. So these are the host of background in which the challenges lies for the DPSUs. And the DPSUs have to look from this angle. This is my perspective. And I'm very, very glad and happy to know today that there is, BEL came out with the ventilators. And the crisis has been converted into an opportunity. 20 lakhs, 19 lakhs is what we were importing, and BEL is supplying at about 3.5 lakhs or 4 lakhs ventilators to that standard. What I'm only trying to say is the opportunities are huge. I mentioned a lot of opportunities are huge. We need to make use of it. Every crisis does give us an opportunity, like I said about the ventilator, or Mr. Malesh also mentioned about it. So we need a real good management, a good leadership, a visionary with commitment to the nation. Definitely DPSUs can do it. Being a man from DPSUs for 38 plus years of DPSU experience, I'm confident that DPSUs will stand up and face this crisis and emerge as the leading technology for the country. And definitely, as we are moving towards a stronger economy, I'm 100% sure that we will be moving towards a strong base of technology also in the years to come, maybe decades to come, doesn't matter, but that needs mind and a commitment, and that's possible. So I thank the organizers for giving me an opportunity to speak on this. Jai Hind.